good to have Rob back with us, and over the last couple of weeks here at the church. It's been a rough year for them, and we've all been praying for them. And Rob, we're so glad you're here. And I'm glad you're here as well. This is a busy time, and thank you for coming and spending the next few minutes with us as we look at different things. I have a belief that the business community needs to take the lead in every community in the areas of how our communities prosper. We want our communities to prosper, and we know we do that through education, through medical, through government, through sport, all these ways. But I think the business community is a great way to lead it, because all of us, are, in one way or another, are in the business community. Our people are, you all are, and I want us to take the lead. So that's why we call it Boca Lead, Lauderdale Lead, and hopefully in 2 months there'll be a Miami Lead as well. And we go over some materials and some things to help each of us as we lead in our communities at work or wherever they may be. What I usually say here deals specifically with business, but it can also work in the nonprofit world, your coaching, homes, whatever setting you want it to do. So today we're going to do something around the tables to get us kind of talking. It's Christmas time. It's not about Christmas today, though, but we're going to do some talking. Here's the question I want to ask. There's sheets in the middle of that little tripod there. You can take them out. And here's the question I want to ask you. What are employees looking for in their employers? Okay, we always talk about leaders and employers impacting their people, but what is it that employees are looking for in their leaders and employers? Now, I did this the other day at Boca, and then I realized there's employers and employees sitting at the same table. So if you want to make two lists, kind of the list you want her to hear and the list you want to really have, I'm only kidding, of course. Come up with the top four. 75,000 people were surveyed over the last many years, about the last 20 years, and there are four very distinct things that are more important than others. I want you to talk among yourselves, come up with the top four most important attributes that employees want in their employers. Can you do it? Take a minute or two and talk around your tables and come up with that list. section back. And let's go over the top 4 that were reported. And these 4 are in order because the first one is off the charts, the most important thing that was identified by workers for their leaders and their employers. So number 1 was this: honesty. Honesty. Did anybody get that? I hear a couple. Good. All right. And the reason why honesty is so important in the workplace and with your leadership having it, and those of you who are leaders, that you have honesty, is it is at the core beginning to develop trust. Trust is not only about honesty, but you can't have trust without honesty. You need other things. And we talked about trust a couple months ago, and that is a theme that I talk about a lot in Boca Lead. I won't talk about it today much, but trust is huge, and it comes from leaders who are honest. Number 2, forward-looking. You can put any word you want there. Visionary, can see the future, futuristic, whatever the word is. Forward-looking, and this is in the workplace. How many got that one, or some derivative of it? Good, excellent. The importance of this is it develops a sense of hope in people at work. If they know or think that the boss or the leader, the team leader knows where they're going and why you're going and what it looks like down the road, around the corner, or across the horizon, it develops a hope. Now, I'm not talking about eternal hope here. I'm just talking about hope in the company, hope in the next quarter, hope in tomorrow, hope in the next deals, those kind of things. It's very important. Number 3, inspiring. Inspiring. Anybody get this? And it can be any derivative word, whatever adjective you want to use. Doesn't have to be the exact word. And actually, when you inspire people, there is a result, and you wouldn't think of this normally. There's not a connection made a lot of times with this, but it is a direct connection in understanding compassion. I have a belief that we as businessmen and women have to have a streak of compassion in our lives. We have to have it with our employees, with our customers, with the people that we serve, and also in the underserved communities that we serve. I believe we have that, and as a leader, if you're inspiring, you are also inspiring people to do the job that needs to be done, but also there's a sense of compassion as well. I won't talk a lot about that today, just a little later. 4th, competence, or any word you want to put with that, knowing their job. They're good at what they do. And as I've said before, just because you're boss does not make you competent. Sometimes those two do not come together. Hopefully they do, but it results in stability. How many times have I talked to people who feel very unstable in their workplace, and it's because of a fear that their bosses and the company doesn't know what it's doing. Now let me ask, anybody get all 4 correct? 3 out of 4. All right, this is good, congratulations. This kind of gets us thinking. Now today what I want to do is I want to kind of go very specific, kind of to the head of the spear, and talk about how we empower our people. How do you empower them? Those 4 things are great ways to empower. If you're honest, these are kind of foundational, but what are some very specific things we can do? I'm going to give you 5. My goal is that you walk out of here with 1. If you can walk out with 1 of the 5 that I give you and go, I'm going to practice it, I'm going to try that, I'm going to test that, I'm going to see if it really works, I think I will have done my job. If you walk out with all 5, you may not do them all. Maybe walk out and decide over the weekend which one you're going to start doing. But let me give you these 5. They're not in an order. They're just I'm doing them in an order, but all 5 are important. Number 1, you have a page there. Model the way. If you want to empower your people, you have got to practice what you talk about. This is about as basic as it gets. But understand that many times it does not happen. Let me give you an example. In the 20th century, there were two human feats that were thought to be impossible that were both accomplished within the same 12-month period, May 1953 to May 1954. One was the climbing of Mount Everest and summiting it, and we know that was done, and there's all kinds of records about that. But the other was breaking the 4-minute mile. It could not be done. The 4-minute mile could not be broken. They'd get to 402.5, and they couldn't break it. It was just like this invisible wall. It couldn't be broken. And so there were 4 guys that were the strongest runners back then. There was a guy named Chris Brasher, there was another guy named Chris Chataway, a guy named Roger Bannister, and a guy named John Landy. All 4 of those had gone 4 minutes, 2 seconds. And everyone knew that one of them would break the 4-minute mile, but they just never could. The first 3 I mentioned, Chris, and Roger, were on the same amateur athletic team in England. John Landy was Australian, so the Brits said, we can't let the Australian win it. And so what they did was they devised a way. They got together, the 3 of these guys, young guys, and if I can just give you a sidebar, I was teaching this last week at Boca Lead, and a guy came forward and said, my father used to run with Roger Bannister and Chris, the 2 Chris's. I'm like, wow, that's so cool. But so these 3 guys get together, and they decide on a race that was 6 months out. So they decide this in the fall of 53, that in the May of 54, they're going to run this race. It was a big race outside of London, and that would be the race. And they decided only one of them would win. So let's pick the winner right now. And they chose Roger Bannister. And this is what they did. Chris Brasher, practice. It's 4 laps back then around the track, 4 laps. He practiced to run around the laps, the first 2 in 59 seconds a lap. 59, practiced it, 59, and he did something that had never really been done before. He paced the other 2 runners. Didn't draft them like you see in NASCAR or in biking, but paced them so that they knew, and he knew exactly that when he crossed the finish line, or the first time, it was 59 seconds. The next time it was 1:58 seconds. And then Chris Chataway would take the race over and run the next quarter mile in 1 minute, because you're slowing down as you're running. So 59, 1 minute. And then the 4th round, Roger Bannister would take over the race and do it as fast as he could, hopefully under 1 minute and 1.5 seconds. And that is exactly what happened. He did it in 3 minutes, 59.4, I believe, or 0.3, and did it and broke a record. Interestingly enough, the other 3 guys, John Landy wasn't in the race. John Landy broke it about 2 weeks later, the 4-minute mile, and the other 2 Chris's broke it at about 4 or 5 weeks later. All 4 of them broke it, but it took 3 of them to model a new way. It was a new way. It was called pacing. And now every sport paces. If you're in any sport of any type, it doesn't matter. And this is an individual sport. Running is I'll run, you run, and the first one across the finish line wins. They actually did it. Just as a total sidebar, the 2 radio announcers there, one was a guy named Harold Abramson of Chariots of Fire fame, and the other one was a guy named Norris McWhirter. Norris McWhirter was so excited about this that he said people would love to see championships and read about them, and he started the Guinness Book of World Records. It was from that race, that day, because these guys decided to model a new way. And you as leaders need to understand that it's not just the first person, Roger Bannister. He finished first, but the Chris Brasher, Chris Chataway, and Roger modeled a new way of how to run. And nowadays, we don't run the mile anymore. It's the 1,000, the 5,000, because it's all metric now. But people are running similarly to how they modeled it back then. And you have an opportunity to model with the people that are underneath you. Take that opportunity and do it. Number 2, here's a great one. Inspire a shared vision. Now, I have a belief that everyone has a vision. It's just sometimes hidden under things. Everybody has a reason to exist. Every one of your employees, even if it's just to get a paycheck, even if it's just to get out of the house. It may be the wrong vision. And if I could I brought a bag here today, just a baggage. I travel a lot. So I travel to a lot. And so I go to Africa every summer. And when I go to Africa, I pack my bag. And I take lightweight things in it because it's hot. I take electric converters because they have a different system down there. I take a lot of things in my bag. So I was there this summer, I had my wife and my daughter with us, we were there, came home, and my very next trip was a month later when it was very cold in Chicago. So if I had pulled out my bag and taken everything I took to Africa to Chicago, I would have been totally unprepared for what I was about to experience, which is cold weather, wind, all the issues that are going on there now, right? So what do? Well, obviously it's very simple. When we come back from a trip, we take out the things that are in our bag that were good for us back then, and we put in the bag things that are good for the future. You see, I don't go to Chicago with a bag filled for South Florida, for Africa, or for the Caribbean. I fill my bag for Chicago. And when the people come down here from Chicago to go to South Florida, they fill their bags with things in South Florida. But what happens to us? We have a bag that's filled with all the past, and then somebody in our company says, well, you got to add this, and you got to add that, and you got to add this, and that. And what happens is people just start stuffing their bags, don't they? And stuffing, we got to keep all this stuff, and now I got to add, oh, you got a new vision over here? I got to add all your vision into this. And what I'm saying is, as leaders here, is help people take out the vision of the past and put into their bag the vision of the future. Now, you say, well, I'm a history guy, so there are things that need to always be in your bag. Your toiletries, the razor, the toothbrush, the combs, the brushes, the etc., the shampoos. I mean, there's things that always stay in your bag, whether you're going to hot weather or cold weather. There are things that need to always be in your bag. Honesty, integrity, forward-looking, these kind of things, trust building, they're always in your bag, but the specific vision that you're leading with people needs to be shared and needs to be looking to the future, forward thinking. Because what happens as leaders, everybody comes with a vision, but it's most likely a vision of the past. And you have to help them pull some stuff out of their bag to put in what needs to be here at work, what needs to happen. And it's not bad stuff. We're taught, if you're an engineer, you're taught certain things. If you're a lawyer or accountant, you're taught certain things. If you're a salesperson, you're taught certain things. But at your company, you may do it a little differently. And you've got to teach people how to do that. Because if not, you're going to have people that have full bags that are pulling their bags with the wrong stuff in it. And they're not going to give you what needs to be given. It's a shared vision. So you need to communicate. We'll talk about communicating visions at another time, but you got to communicate that vision and get it into people's bags. I believe everybody carries a bag, and those who are in treatment centers, and I know we have people that do a lot of that, we usually talk about baggage is bad. Baggage is not all bad. There's good baggage. You just got to make sure you put the good stuff in and take the bad out, or the inapplicable stuff out and all. So that's number 2. Number 3. This is the one the bosses don't like, and everybody goes, but employees love this. Challenge the process. Now, can I tell you what it's not and then what it is? Okay. So I used to hire a lot of interns, and my son was one of them. So don't tell him this, that I told you this. But they like to do it their own way. Like, we can do it better than you tell us, right? I said, you're an intern, you're not even an employee yet, you're still in college. Just do what I tell you to do and learn from, no, we gotta do it our own way. And so they thought challenging the process was just doing it their own way. We're gonna do it our way. And I remember I made the fatal flaw, never say this to anybody. I told them this once, because I did it once when I was an intern in a place once. I said, it's easier to get forgiven than permission. Have you ever done that? It's easier to get forgiven than permission. Never tell your interns that. Because they start doing things and come back and go, I did it, forgive me. And I go, no, that works once. But after that, it's over. So, challenge the process. You as leaders have to challenge, is what you're doing really legitimate today? And a lot of us are middle-aged. It might have been legitimate 15 years ago. Is it still legitimate today? So let me give you an example. Does anybody work for Cleveland Clinic in here? I'll ask that because Cleveland Clinic is huge in South Florida. Okay, so I'm using them as an example, in a good way. Cleveland Clinic is one of the best healthcare systems in the country, which makes it one of the best in the world, right? Mayo, MD Anderson, Cleveland, there's some great ones. Cleveland Clinic a few years ago was losing business. They were losing business, patients, whatever you want to call them, in their core competency. Cleveland Clinic's core competency, at least it used to be, was right here. Kind of the lower GI, from heart down to your stomach and here, and all the things surrounding it. They were the best in the world in this area. Maybe they are now up here in the orthopedics, but this was their best area. And they were losing business to inferior systems, and people were leaving Cleveland Clinic to go to the second-rate ones. So Toby Cosgrove, who was the president of Cleveland Clinic in Cleveland, wanted to find out, why are we the best, undisputed the best, and yet we're losing customers, or patients as they're called there? So he started to put focus groups together and ask them, why did you leave us and go to them? And on, and this is what the answer was. Because you're more interested in my organ than me. You're more interested in my organ than me. And I thought, when I read the story of Cleveland Clinic, I said, that's exactly right. I remember I was talking to someone here whose husband just had her second knee replacement. When you're tall, those of you who are tall, or those of you who are not tall, can I just dispel a myth here? We do not hit our heads on doors, okay? You do. You know why? Because when you're tall, you do it one time, and then you never do it again, because you're always looking ahead. But, so you never look at doors, and so you get hit all the time. We are always constantly looking at how we're going to get hit with our heads. Well, but we do have a problem. Bad knees, bad shoulders. So I've had 4 knee operations, shoulder operation. I put more orthopedics through their kids through school with my tall children. They've all had operations left and right through sports. And what's interesting about that is I was going to the best orthopedic surgeon up in Palm Beach County where I live. He was ranked the best. And I went to him, and he had a very small vocabulary. It was always one syllable, and it was 4 letters long. He was like a cursing maniac, this doctor. He would curse when he didn't need to curse. I mean, every other word was a 4-letter word. And I said, sir, you're the best doctor you've been recommended. I said, you have no bedside manner. I'm leaving. I tell doctors this. I don't know. You might be afraid to, but I'm going to tell them when they act like a jerk. And so this guy acted like a jerk, and I left. I came down here to Fort Lauderdale to the best doctor in orthopedics, who happened to be better than that doctor anyway, and have done 4 operations with him. But I am not going to put up with bad bedside manner. We do care, and you as leaders need to care for people. You need to be concerned not only with the bottom line, fixing organs, but also, or whatever your bottom line responsibility is, but you need to challenge the process to help and work with people. Now, if you're working with people and doing a great job and not doing your core competency well, then maybe you need to do the other. Maybe you got to get better at what you do. You've got to challenge your process constantly. I have people who always say, oh, I wish it was the old way, right? I wish it was, I was born in Fort Lauderdale. I went to school in Pompano with all of my Pompano Chamber of Commerce. There you are back there. And I live in Boca Raton, and everybody goes, don't you wish it was the way it was before when you were growing up? South Florida, I'm speaking of. And I happen to be one, I like it the way it is now. I'm kind of a future-looking guy. I like it. And I don't want to go back to where we had no air conditioning. I don't want to go back that if I wanted a good meal, I had to go to Miami. I don't want to go back that if I have to buy a shirt, I got to go down here. Well, Fort Lauderdale, you guys had Bird Irons and Jordan Marsh. Wow. We had nothing. I had to drive to downtown Fort Lauderdale to buy a shirt. I don't want to go back to that. I like that I can buy it in my own town. We don't want to go back. We've got to challenge the process. Number 4, enable others to act. If you forget everything I said today, this is the one to take away. This is the one to take away. You as a leader, if you want to empower your people, enable them to act, to do the giftedness, the skill sets, whatever it is that they can do it. An example. Have you ever stayed at a Ritz-Carlton? Or gone to eat or just walk in the lobby? Do you know what the motto of Ritz-Carlton is? It is really silly. It's actually stupid. Here it is. Ladies and gentlemen, serving ladies and gentlemen. Now, can I just tell you, the people that go to Ritz-Carlton are in the top echelons of the socioeconomic status of the world. The people who work at the Ritz-Carltons tend to be at the lower echelons, not at the bottom, but at the lower ones. And yet what Ritz-Carlton system has done has equaled them. And not by bringing down the wealthy, but by bringing up the workers. And I was in the Paris Ritz-Carlton. No, I didn't stay there. I can't afford to. But I was in there this summer, walking through there, and the treatment I got by the staff was unbelievable. They truly were ladies and gentlemen. And the reality that they had 4 or 5 less zeros at the end of their paycheck than the people staying there is ultimately irrelevant. You and I need to enable our people at all levels to act, to do what they do. As leaders, you are the people that set the platform for other people to do what they are gifted at doing. People go, oh, Bill, I love that you can stand up here. You know, this is one little gift among hundreds of gifts that God gives every one of us. Quick example. At our church, we have a huge church with a lot of facilities. I took our facilities director to Haiti with me a couple years ago. Okay, he's quiet, great guy, he's great with the machines and fixing things and all the rest, but he'd never stand up here. He wouldn't even come into this room probably, wouldn't feel comfortable with you guys because you're all dressed up and he doesn't. And so we go down there and we're there, and all of a sudden somebody says, this machine, this engine's broken. Now, if you're not familiar with Haiti, Haiti runs on small engines. You know, this country runs on electricity, Haiti runs on small engines. So the small engine was broken, they couldn't fix it. So my guy goes, let me try. He walks there and there's this engine that must be 40 years old and he's fixing it. By the end of this hour fixing, there were 40 people around him, workers. It was almost like a medical theater with him working on this machine like a person with all these people watching. And he was using his giftedness, and you know what? He did it. He fixed the engine. I mean, they were clapping as if he had stood up here and told the greatest speech. They're clapping. He didn't speak Creole. They didn't speak English. And you know what I was doing the whole time? I was leaning against a broom in the back, watching this, because I couldn't do any of that. Nor did those 40 people care who I was. Alls I did was provide the opportunity for this man to use the skills that he had been given and worked hard. And you as a leader have that opportunity to help people use their skills. This is how, when I fire somebody, most times, unless it's for some ethical reason, okay, put that aside for a reason, it's usually because it's the wrong person in the wrong place. And I am not helping them with their skills. And ultimately, I say, you need to be working somewhere else, either within the company or elsewhere, because you are far more gifted in this area, and we need it in this area. Let's help you find it in the area you are. That's what a true leader does, is help others in their giftedness, and we enable them to act upon it. Some of them don't even know it, so some need a kick in the rear and say, you can do it. Finally, fifth, real quick, encourage the heart. When you get to know me long enough, you'll know that gratitude is, I breathe it, I ooze it, I sweat it. Everything, in my view, has to have gratitude attached to it. You need to encourage, as the leader, a grateful spirit in your organization. A sense of thankfulness. Yes, they are getting paid, and yes, they're being paid to do a job. I totally get that. And if they don't do the job, I get that you're responsible for helping them through that. But there is also a sense of gratitude. And this time of year, it's huge to do it. So let me give you one last thing. I brought a show and tell. So I hit it. Does anybody know what this is? Maybe you can't see it. Hopefully my engineers know what this is. Anybody? A plumb line. Okay, it's an old-fashioned plumb line. The purpose of a plumb line is to go to a corner of a proposed building or whatever you're doing and to give you true vertical, so that when you start the wall, it's not on an angle out or on an angle in, but it's straight up, so that you can build the entire building. The two key things is getting the foundation right and getting the first corner. Nowadays we have these all electronically done, and they're all done with incredible lasers. But if you go back just a few years, and what's amazing when you put a weight on it, it is always straight up vertical, unless I move it. And then what happens? It becomes a pendulum. It just, you don't know where you are with this. And this is what we as leaders do many times with our employees. When we should be helping them grab hold of true vertical, we confuse them, and then they're moving back and forth, and you cannot build a building, much less your business, with a pendulum. It's fun to watch, fun to look at, fun to see, but you need to be working with your people so that there is a true vertical. And I think a way to do that is to encourage them and to show some gratitude. And this time of year, you know, I tell you what, I work at a church. It's embarrassing the bonuses we give in a church. It's embarrassing. We don't have the money. So when we give I did it last week, we had a big lunch. I'm affirming everybody we have 30 employees or 32. I say, guys, this is not a bonus, because you are worth far more than the money that's in that check, in that envelope. But this is a thank you, because we are grateful for all you do. And if you can show some gratitude, leaders, we across this room, you will have a better place to work. Your people will be more motivated. They will be enabled to do the things that they're gifted to do. And I believe your company will do better. And if your company does better, and this is very selfish, this community will do better. I believe that success in one area breeds it in another area. And so I encourage you to do that today. Have a great Christmas to those of you who celebrate. And I know we have Jewish people here, and I wish you a very happy Hanukkah and a meaningful one. Hanukkah is an incredible holiday. I hope you Gentiles need to learn it. It is unbelievable. But our Christmas is an incredible time too. And so I wish you both the happiest, the best, and most meaningful time of the year. Thank you.
Thank you.